Instagram tells me I'm live. Still a price tag on the bottom of my cup. Someone gave $1 for it. That's so like me, isn't it? $1 for a coffee cup. That's a deal. Hi everyone. Hello, happy Tuesday. It's sunny in Indiana. Hello. If you're following me on TikTok, you saw that we had, hey, TRCOAA. We had an interesting weekend protecting at the Switchyard Brewery. So gave $1 for it. Numa Soul says, I like the way I say it. Hello, Coach Nathan. I cannot wait to bring you into the live. I say I gave $1 for it. You know why? Because it's in my blood. It's in my blood. If you gave $1 for something, it is you have conquered life. You have mastered life if you can give $1 for something. Somebody who grew up, and there is no judgment here whatsoever. Yard sales. What else? Any kind of fair trade, anything that you could do, flea markets. We were there. It's how I outfitted myself and kids for years. I really love how positive your posts are, and most certainly your personality, and it is in our blood, isn't it? Thank you, TRCOAA. I'm not sure how to say that, so I'm just going to use your initials. I really do appreciate that, because I think sometimes I'll get called out often by people who will say, well, why do you have to be so rude? Well, there's a difference between being rude and cruel and disrespectful, but also calling out rude and cruel and disrespectful. And we living in a patriarchal culture which wants to gatekeep our rules of engagement. In other words, how we call out racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogynistic comments or behavior. A lot of times that's where those comments come from. Someone wanting to say, well, you have to follow those rules of engagement, which means you can't call them out in public. You take them privately into a room. No, those days are over. Right now we have a lot going on in this country that says we have to use our voices, because the loudest people in the room are the ones who are trying to create a culture, an environment, a reality here in America that is centered around Christian nationalism. So if we continue to try to work in their rules, it's going to ensure that our voices are going to be silenced. So if we can do that in a way that at least calls to the people that I'm reaching, that where you feel that my message is one of kindness and is one that is at least resonating with you, because you feel you hear yourself, you hear that I'm speaking to you, then I've done my job. I always say that I don't call out people certainly don't misgender people, not intentionally. Sometimes I'll do it unintentionally, and I certainly apologize for it quickly when I do. Or anything to do with body characteristics or anything like that. Anything where people cannot change their circumstances, anything that changes their physical attributes, that removes the energy away from the focus, which is elevating the human condition. If we are spiraling down into insults, then we've lost our way. So that's one thing I won't do. And those are some of my rules of engagement, if you will. I don't need it. And when someone starts throwing that at me, they've just lost control, and they're trying to distract me because they don't know what else to throw at me. So anyway, rules of engagement 101, I guess. Let's see where we are. I missed some things here. Thank you, Huber. Huber C. My daughter and I have some more I want to do for her. Have you seen the trio of the? There was a movement. Michael W. Smith. Okay, if you're a contemporary Christian fan, you would know him from back in the day, when he had some crossover hits, and when he had those hits, he then actually went to some of the award shows and started doing dance routines. Oh, it was a little cringeworthy. It just like, yeah, let's not do that. But during that era, there's still video clips of people trying to bring in some of that, and I want to do a clip. I want to do that dance routine. So I keep warning my daughter and my stepdaughter, like, get ready. We're going to do that step. We're going to do that routine. Okay, now I want to talk to you a little bit before I have a wonderful guest coming in today to talk, and I love this human's energy, and I'm so honored to be in this space. But before I do, I want to give you a couple of announcements. First of all, tonight at 7 p.m. I am going live in the Patreon spiritual community to do a Q&A. And that's where you get to be in that space with me one-on-one if there's questions that you specifically want to ask me. So that's tonight. Do not forget about our Rev Karla spiritual community on Patreon. You can find that in the link in the bio. That is just getting going. I didn't bring the book today, but we are going to do a book of the month club. And the first book we're reading together is Rob Bell's What is the Bible? And next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. Instead of this normal live, I'm going live at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard on December 20th with Yasmin Mohammed. Yasmin is the founder of Free Hearts, Free Minds. Go ahead and look this amazing human up and see her story. And we're going to be talking about, this month is Ex-Muslim Awareness Month. Yasmin is going to share her story and also explain how the importance to understand the similarities in extremist Islam and extremist Christianity, but also her view on what's happening in America and how things that happen here impact the world. It's going to be an amazing conversation, so make sure you mark your calendars for that, because that's going to be incredible. And then I'm doing a winter solstice gathering in the spiritual community on Patreon on December 20th at 7 p.m. So those 2 nights, 4 p.m. I'm interviewing Yasmin Muhammad, and then later that night I'm doing the winter solstice gathering. So we're going to talk about welcoming the light back into our lives. Okay, now we're going to stop there now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Coach Nathan, who's going to come in. If you're not following him, we'll drop his username into Coach Nathan. If you want to put that into the chat, I want to tell a little story about Coach Nathan before he comes on. When I first started posting on social media, I was doing a lot on on Facebook. And I got hit hard by a lot of white men who were really offended by my presence. And that really was a cue for me, because what I found myself doing was over explaining and over defending myself to them. So I took my eyes off of my followers who were steadily growing and started talking to them, because I was still indoctrinated into that belief that somehow I had to convince them that my teaching was worthy to be out here independent of their approval. And it was exhausting. But that is when Nathan and I became friends, and I just so appreciate his support. So I'm going to invite him in now to come in so we can talk about Coach Nathan is a former evangelical pastor. So his story of deconstruction is something that you need to hear as well, because I love how he landed gently into the arms of Buddhism, and also explain a little bit about his life story. So I think, Nathan, all you need to do is ask to be invited. I wish I should probably write these down sometime so I remember, but I think you ask to be invited into my live, or maybe I just go invite you myself. Nope, it says you have no request, so you have to ask to come in. Let me pick up my cup that I got for $1. And we're going to see if Nathan joins us here. I'm drinking my green tea latte. Can you see it? It's my favorite. I just have my Karen wig down here somewhere too. I just had to do a video this morning. It'll be up live later. It's a good one. It's a good one. You're such a nerd. I know who that mod is. I know that's Stacy. I know. You're such a nerd. I'm trying to figure out how to request. So can someone give Nathan some guidance on how to request? I think there should be a plus sign down by the comments. Am I right? Can someone help give some guidance to Coach Nathan so he can figure out how to come into my live? I should be able to do this, Nate, and I'm sorry that I don't know. I'm making a note right now to make sure I have those. Oh, we just wing it. We just swing it, and we still just have a good time, and we still get inspired, and we still connect to each other. Now, the old Karla would have been different. I'd had typed notes all over the place, and I would have tightly controlled this, but I just kind of go with the flow these days. Yes, I am. Let's see. You love tea, Barbara? So do I. I drink it all day. So I start my morning with a green tea latte, and I kind of warm it up until about noon. And then I switch over to probably some like black iced tea or something like that. And I end the day with chamomile, peppermint, fennel, and ginger. Those are my combination. I just love it. It feels so good on the tummy. So yeah, that's my big. While we're waiting on Coach Nathan to figure this out, Barbara says it's on the right. I can't see. Let me see if there's something I can do here. Oh, wait. I can invite you. I just invited you. That might be the ease. Sorry. It was right there the whole time. While we're waiting for Nathan to come in, and here he comes.
There we are.
There you go. Spiritual Reset is also going to start January 1st. This is going to be a wonderful, another kind of a monthly thing that you and I can do together, where I've got these writings, journal prompts, meditation practices, and it will take you throughout the entire year. Hello, my friend. How are you? I'm
Hello,
sorry about that little
good.
hiccup. I should remember these things, but it's hard for me to do that.
Oh,
Exactly.
wrong generation.
Exactly. But yet here we are.
Things are so complicated. We need a 5-year-old to explain it to us anymore.
My 5-year-old grandson has now become a 14-year-old who actually is just out. He's in everybody's. There's a wait list now for people to help him. But how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I got you beat, by the way. 50 cents.
Oh, all right. It's down. I will find a 50-cent coffee cup. So I was telling a little bit about you, but I think the important thing for our followers to hear, because your story is so important, and you brought up something else. Now, I think I've got you beat on age by several years. If you don't mind sharing. I'm sorry. Sorry, what? Okay.
I'm willing to concede that.
Because you're not a boomer.
I'm for.
You're a Gen Zer.
No.
But still, you remember, do you remember you would remember life without a PC, wouldn't you? Or no? Yeah, okay. Yeah, no internet in your home or anything like that. Yeah. So I think the important thing about that is that people sometimes want to write off the older generations as being like, we're just gonna move on past you. But I think what's happening here, especially in these kinds of in social media, is that we're showing that not only we're changing, we're helping pave the way for the generations to stand on our shoulders. I mean, I think that's the way I see what we're doing, soothing a lot of the wounds that our generation caused, especially boomers. You're carrying some of those wounds of the boomers and the silent generation. I know that because I know from my own experience what I carry and still trying to work through. But I think your story, especially as an evangelical pastor who's now deconstructed, I think is such an important story for people to hear. So I'd like to start there again and have you just share that story so people hear who you were and who you are now.
So one correction, I'm not Buddhist.
I apologize.
No, that's all right. I've definitely gained a lot from Buddhist ideas and concepts and teaching,
Okay.
but I don't consider myself Buddhist in any way. But okay, where do I start? I was raised in a Christian family, in a good family. Let me start by saying that. Anything that I say against Christianity is not meant to reflect on parents or anything like that at all. It's against a system, not
Sure.
against individuals.
Yeah,
But anyhow,
I'd like to pause
I
there
was
too,
raised in.
because I had, during my deconstruction, I also had to reconcile that, because my grandmother was a staunch Southern Baptist, but I also, who very
Mm-hmm.
much carried the water for the patriarchy, and who very much
Sure.
internalized her role as a submissive woman in that system. And when I started to deconstruct and I started to peel back those layers on the things that just no longer served my highest good, it was like, what do I do with this experience for this loving woman who did so much for my spirituality? And we know, I mean, in my opinion, we know how, when we can circle back and look at our experiences and say, well, this system was broken, but there were some good people in it who were doing the best that they could, even though that they may have been ignorant to some of what was weaponized. They were doing the best they could inside that system. And for me to be able to be grateful for my grandmother's presence in my life and not have to throw all that away and her with it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for recognizing that, because I think that's an important part of people's deconstructing, is being able to reconcile the good with the things that were harmful. So please go ahead.
And on that note, when you and I engage with Christian people, quite often they don't see the distinction. When you attack an idea, they feel like you're attacking them, you know, and so that gives them license to come back in a really vicious way.
Yeah, very good point.
When I was in my teens and early 20s, you know, I did the usual rebelling against everything that my parents stood for and all of that. Eventually came back and became a minister. We never used the word pastor in the Churches of Christ. You'll hardly ever hear it
pastor
used.
Or reverend,
and
correct?
Those who do,
you didn't. Yeah. Those were big triggers.
Either.
Those were big triggers, and even the Southern Baptist Church.
So anyhow, I go ahead and use the term now to describe what I was, because it's a term everybody knows. But about a decade as a very conservative, very fundamentalist, evangelical preacher. And beginning to see the cracks in that. I mean, this was what I've heard called a death by 1,000 cuts. You know, it wasn't one big thing that caused my beginning to deconstruct. It was a lot of things. And some of the first things were listening to people who were also Christians, but maybe of a different bent, who loved me and who sat down with me and said, okay, is that really what the Bible says? And really forcing me to reevaluate what I thought. Well, when you start reevaluating what you think, it goes into places you never thought you'd go. Like, is the Bible really the Word of God? That was never a question in my mind. But when it became a question, I couldn't ignore it anymore. To shorten the story down, because I could go on all day on this, eventually I had to give up my belief in hell, because it made no sense. The reason for it, the God that would send people there, all of it did not make any rational sense. And when I gave up the belief in hell, I found that I was free to think. because there was no punishment for my thoughts anymore. Not even any punishment, no eternal punishment for where I went with my thoughts and how I acted
can I
on
pause
my
there for a
thoughts.
minute and ask you a question? Because that, I think that's a very common thing for people who start to deconstruct. And that's not my favorite word for the experience of like start to you lose your faith. I didn't pick that up till TikTok. I haven't found another word to. I called it untangling my spirituality from the things that no longer serve my highest good. But that does, it's a lot easier to say deconstruct. Yeah. So I do want to say that, but I do think that all of a sudden realizing that you are being controlled by a fear-based theology that is, and it's not holding you anymore, and you start to understand the control mechanisms, and hell is one of the first things that you start to address. So when that's gone, things start to become very wobbly. Where were you inside your faith system at that time? Were you still a practicing minister, pastor? Were you still in the church, or where were you when that's part of your theology started to dismantle?
Both. Yes, I was still in the church. I was not preaching full time at that point. So, but I was still preaching somewhat regularly. So, yeah, that was okay. Where I was when that was going on. When I would get up to speak, because I was invited to preach it at a couple of different churches, I'd get up to speak and it got really uncomfortable because I realized that some of the things that I was saying, I no longer completely believed, and that felt honest to me. I had to quit altogether and get this straightened out, because I couldn't stand up there and be dishonest. That's never sat right with me. So as I continued deconstructing, like you said, for lack of a better word, what I believed, I found that there were a lot of things that I believed that weren't in the Bible, and a lot of things in the Bible that I didn't believe. That was crushing, because it was at that point I knew everything was going to fall apart. And I didn't know if I was ready for it, but I knew I couldn't close the box. And I suppose it was around that time, I think so, when you and I met.
I think so, because you were just starting to reconcile that. And I think I was a little bit farther ahead of you on the path, because I had found my voice. And what you shared there is, I want to pause a minute, because that was so few words, but it's everything in your life. When you start to realize how things start to crumble, and what's left when all of that facade that was your belief system falls away.
Yeah.
And being able to hold that space to say, all right, I'm going to trust that I'm being led somewhere, or I'm coming out of something and I don't understand it, but I'm going to hold the space. I'm going to continue to do that. And I love the way you describe that. I think that's so important, because that is such a hard place for people. I want to jump ahead a little bit, because I watched you go dormant, which is you should have, to be in that spiritual wilderness and start to process these things and see where your life is going to go. Then I started to see you find your voice, and I saw the pushback you got as people started to recognize that it wasn't enough that you were just going to leave the religion. You were going to talk about where your journey. And there were many people who were offended by that. They couldn't separate their experience from your experience, and that you had some really toxic, caustic comments, and you did it. So proud of you. You held it better than I did. You didn't over explain, you held your space. But tell me what was going on inside you when that started to happen, because I think that's a hard thing for people when they're deconstructing and they realize, like, you know what, I want people to stop inviting me to church. Stop telling me to come back to God. Stop telling me that you don't have faith without church or without Christianity. I don't want to hear that anymore. So you got to find that. You got to find your language, and you got to find your boundaries. Tell me how that experience was for you.
The kinder comments were out there in public. The more vicious ones were in private. I was told by several people that I never was a real Christian, that I never, they knew that I always just went with whatever was popular at the time. I never did really have any conviction or anything like that, just dismissive and mean, People that I had baptized, that I never was a real Christian, and who don't talk to me anymore, simply because I changed my mind. Only because I changed my mind on something. The most difficult thing for me was that when I called these people brother and sister, and there are a lot of them that I'm still very close with, and we have great relationships and all of that. I'm just speaking of what you asked on. When I called people brother and sister, that meant something to me. Family is something that is very, very important to me. And to find out that all they meant was member of the club hurt. It really hurt. And so after those, when I would be talking to people online, of course, I kept it as professional as I could. I was treating them the way that I wished they were treating me a lot of the time. A lot of times afterward, I would just break down. I'd break down, I'd cry, I would second guess everything that I was doing. And it was an important process that led to the complete walking away from it, which happened. I was on a walk, and I was praying to this God that I wasn't sure if I really believed in anymore. And I said, if anybody knows me, you do. And you know that I'm being honest right now. I'm losing all belief in you, and I need you to show up. I need you to show up for sure, for real, not vague signs or anything like that. I need you here now, or I have to leave. And there was no answer. And that was the most crushing thing ever. And there's a song that was playing a couple of days later that just broke me apart. That song, Say Something, I'm Giving Up on You. That song, this day, I can't hear it without without breaking down.
Okay. So I can. Am I there? Did I?
But through the process of grieving that and of losing that, I realized that there was something there that I was in relationship with, and that something was in me, and it was precious, and it was always there, and it always did love me, and it was not external to me. It was God. It was here.
So, okay, I did not expect that response from me, because that song also had something to do with my spiritual journey away from my religious heritage. There's also a song by Jason Gray that talks about it's more like falling in love than something to believe in. And that song also had meaning for me as well. And thank you for that, because I love how you described that just because your faith in this anthropomorphized patriarchal figure that we're supposed to be obedient children to changes into something deep within that we really can't define or describe. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, my spirituality changed, and everything I thought I knew broke away. and I'm more content with not knowing, but accepting that something bigger than I exists, and it connects us and it lives within us. And that might be as far as I get, as far as my spiritual awareness in this life, or on this side of the physical realm, however else you want to define it. How do you define that? Okay, I thought so.
Boy, that's pretty close. Um, for me, I feel that I have no use for faith anymore. And I mean faith in the sense of believing in something that my reason and intellect can't accept. The cognitive dissonance that happens from that, I just want to know what's real. I just want to know what's real. And the more I look for that, the more amazing mysteries of I don't know-ness arise. And realizing that that's okay, that not knowing is a wonderful place to be, because that's where wonder and adventure and all the stuff that makes life meaningful exists. I love walking
I
the
love
next thing that I
that too.
don't know.
Being content in the mystery, and staying curious that way. And I noticed that in your teachings, and that's where I was attempting. I didn't intend to label you as, but your teachings have that mystical language that I think is so eloquently uh, stating what your spirituality looks like. You have a teaching on your channel on the spiritual but not religious journey, the difference between religion and spirituality, where you use such expansive language that is just so beautiful. Does how do you um, how do you prepare yourself, or what is arriving for you, because it's obviously looking different than when you were an evangelical pastor, where the Bible was what you used as a literal translation for your teachings, and now it's coming from this other place. What's changed for you? How does it show up? How does that those teachings, because obviously you're a wisdom keeper and still a teacher, and more effective in my book. So how does that arrive for you now?
So in evangelical Christianity, certainty is the goal. You have to be certain. You have to be certain, especially of the dogmatic principles underpinning everything else. You know, you have to be certain that Jesus is the Son of God. Certainty is the goal. And realizing that it's an unattainable goal. Now, there's some irony there because I'm pretty certain of that. But realizing that this is an unattainable goal, and that we're all just on this journey of trying to figure out the mystery. As teachers, we don't have to have the answers. We just have to know where a couple of doors are that we can open up and say, walk into the mystery with me. Let's look at it together. And the way that we tend to look at things together is by dialoguing with each other. And when we're talking back and forth, like when you and I do, there are things that arise that probably never would have arisen if I was just sitting here talking to myself. As a matter of fact, I'm sure it would get pretty silly after a while. But just inviting people into the journey, inviting people to leave certainty aside for a while and just be kids again, going out there and saying, "Ooh, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? Can I play with
Curious,
that?" Right?
wonder, those things that we might have left behind when we were told to be certain about certain things. But really, spirituality is inviting that. Someone says, am I cutting in and out, Hutch? Someone says we're cutting in and out. I want to make sure it's not me. Yeah, I think that language is not used a lot inside organized religion because that's hard to control. You can't gatekeep that when people
Right.
are having that kind of experience. I want to start wrapping this up, and I might put you on the spot here. And if you don't feel like answering this, don't. We can come back to this, but I want to the delay is really bad today. So I'm sorry about that. I am in a new place, as you can see here. So maybe it's my signal, but we'll work on that. Because this is a conversation I'd love to have you come back on, Coach Nathan, if you have the time, because I think your wisdom is so important. But here's the
Oh,
question, and this comes up a lot for me, and I'm happy to share my thoughts on it. As an evangelical, and I think I'll always be deconstructing elements of my faith. There's always a peeling back of layers of things and saying, oh, there's a new one. I forgot about this. But really coming face to face with what I do about Jesus. And I get asked this question a lot, and I'm just going to tell you, I refuse. I will not define in some ways what my relationship with Jesus looks like, because I still hold on to my religious heritage because I did the work. So I call myself an unchurched, non-conforming Christian, which means I'm not going to conform to any of the organized religion tenets, but I'm going to hold on to the experience because it made me who I am today. And that means that I can still look for the wonder and the mystery in who Jesus was without having to defend what I believe. But people ask me that all the time because your relationship with Jesus is so romanticized inside evangelical, conservative, fundamentalist Christianity. And I want people to understand that there's no, your deconstruction does not mean you have to give that element up, but yet does it change? Yes. So I'm over explaining this before I hand this to you, but I really would like, because
okay.
you have a gift with explaining this, and I'd love to hear your insights to that question. What do you do with Jesus?
The same thing you do with any other person from history. If there are things about them that you like, that you would like to incorporate into your life, you do. And if there are things about them that you don't, you don't. I think that we need to stop making our teachers into heroes and heroes into gods. I don't know for sure that the person represented in the New Testament ever really existed as represented. I don't know that his students didn't do what a lot of good students do and create this mythical version of their teacher to make him into the person that they see him as. I don't know that that didn't happen. I know that there are writings that record sayings that may or may not have come from a man named Jesus. When I see writings, sayings, and ideas that resonate with me, that challenge me, I want to take those. When I see ones that disgust me, that insult my soul, I want to discard them. And I get to do that no matter who it is.
So it becomes another journey of discovery, because you're going to peel some of that away, but it doesn't mean that there cannot still be meaningful connection. And for those of you who will see this and are wondering, I have some book recommendations for you. The first I would recommend is Being Buddha. Is it Living Buddha, Living Christ, or Being Buddha, Being Christ? Anyway, it's Thich Nhat Hanh's book. That's a beautiful book. That gives you a different perspective, as does Resurrecting Jesus by Adyashanti. So this, especially with Adyashanti, who was a raised Methodist, conservative Methodist, and went on to change their name to Adyashanti, and obviously leading an incredibly mystical path. But then also let's take a look at Zealot by Reza Aslan, Rezaslan. And not done here. How Jesus Became God by Bart Ehrman. So these are 4 different mirrors for you to say, what am I going to do about Jesus? Well, what if what you want to do about Jesus is to rediscover the Jesus you probably never knew, then make a commitment to see that Jesus in the eyes of the mystics and the eyes of the scholars. And go ahead. No, please go.
I'm sorry. If I were to ask somebody, what do you do about Martin Sheen? They would look at me with a blank stare. If I were to ask, what do you do about George Washington? What do you mean by that? What do I do about? Other people from history, we don't speak about that way. There's something that we need to consider about when we say, what do you do about Jesus? Or you might ask someone, what do you do about Muhammad? We're placing them in a different category when we do that, not treating them like human beings, like we would treat everyone else. We're placed on a pedestal that they could easily be knocked down from, rather than engaging them as one of us, maybe further along on the path.
Good. Very good. So those book titles have been put into the chat or the comments, so you can see those. And again, that staying in that curious discovery is such an important part of your untangling from your religious heritage, but yet still desiring that connection to the things that that served you, that reconciliation, if you will. I mean, you started this conversation by saying, look, I'm not talking about the entirety. I had good Christian parents, but I'm talking about the system itself. And I think that's so important because we get to define that for ourselves. And so for many of us, it'll show up differently. And I think that's even why you see now even evangelicals deconstructing the racist, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic theology, and yet holding on to the Trinity. And, you know, you and I aren't here to judge anybody's beliefs on those. It's more about how are we all using our faith to elevate the human condition, so we can all sit at the table of humanity and elevate the human condition. And I love that that's what's happening here in community, is that we see that there's a threat over here by people holding on to some of this theology where they think that has become weaponized. And instead we're coming to this point. So any last thoughts, anything rising for you before we call this a wrap for today? Anything else you'd like to share with people?
Sure. It is okay to attack ideas. It's okay to attack systems viciously. It's okay to assault concepts. People are to be respected, are not. And we need to rediscover the difference between those two. If you and I can set an idea on the table and tear it apart without tearing each other apart, we've come to a very high level of communication. And that's something that I see you doing.
I appreciate that. Coach Nathan, thank you so much. Your server is at Coach Nathan Lake. Please follow him here on Instagram and on TikTok. He's just getting going on that account on TikTok, and I want to see you get over 1,000 followers so we can go live there as well. My audience there would love to hear from you. All right, don't forget, I'm going live tonight in the Patreon community to answer your questions. Join us there. I call it church like no other because I can. Because we can define church, right? And next Tuesday, I'll be interviewing Yasmin Mohammed in a very special interview. You do not want to miss this one. And Spiritual Reset goes live very, very soon. And I'm really looking forward to this. It'll be your opportunity to be in community with me once a month, where I'm offering some writings to help you just look at your spiritual integrity each month before you start each month. Okay. Thank you all so very much, Coach Nathan. Thank you again for being here, my friend. We'll do this again very soon. For now, everyone, take care. Have a great day.